All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Civic Sounds, a podcast by American Kona Moi, and my name is Kevin Apodo. Today, I want us to talk about someone and something so special. I want us to talk about, or I want to tell you a brief story of what I learned about the late former Prime Minister Raila Amollo Odinga at a personal level. And this is something that I believe you can take even for yourself and learn from it. So we know the country is still in a mourning season. We are still mourning the demise of the late former Prime Minister Raila Amollo Odinga and the former party leader of ODM. So who is Raila? And I want to speak for me. Who is Raila? I mean, what comes to my mind when I think about Raila or when I hear about the name Raila Odinga? Personally, when I hear the name Raila Odinga, what comes to my mind is a defender. When I hear about the name Raila Odinga, what comes to my mind is a fighter. When I hear about the name Raila Odinga, what comes to my mind is ODM and opposition politics. I know you too could be having something about him that you perhaps hits your mind whenever you think or you remember him. So what comes to my mind, or what comes to your mind, must have been informed by something. Maybe there is how he touched you in a way. Maybe there is how you interacted with him in a certain way. Personally, I would not lie that I interacted with him that much. Most of the times I interacted with him on televisions, or maybe once in a while in political rallies, or even in events, where he could show up and I was there. But at a personal level, we did not closely interact. And I know there are people who closely interacted with him. Having said everything that I remember him for, or everything that comes to my mind every time I think of his name or I hear his name, something really rings into my mind. And this is something that I would like to share with us, our viewers, or with you, our viewers, because it is something that we can pick up and learn from and even build on. And this is personal branding. All right? Personal branding is very, very important. And for me, before you brand yourself, you have to identify yourself. So how do you develop self-identity? It is asking the why. For example, why am I, or why was I created a man? Why am I the host of this podcast? So the moment you understand the why then becomes your identity. You get to understand why you are serving in the position you are serving in life. So asking about the why. Some of us, maybe we might take time to identify the why, or to realize the why. Why me? Why me? So after I know my why, then now I start branding myself and positioning myself to live up to that why. Okay? And sometimes this why could even be the what, Most of the times I challenge people to ask themselves, what do I want people to know me for? As Kevin, personally as Kevin, What do I want people to know me for? You as our viewer, what do you want people to know you for? It is very, very important for you to ask yourself that one. The moment you realize that, then that will now become your purpose, your identity. Just like I've told you about Raila Odinga, everything that I said I remember him for, or everything that I said that comes to my mind anytime I remember or I hear of his name, those were his identity to me in my own judgment. So that therefore means even you as at a personal level, you need to understand your identity and then build on it. Even companies, big companies have identities. And let me give you an example. For example, the Safaricom. Safaricom is a telecommunications company. And Safaricom has this green color. Apparently, if you go to, maybe you want to buy something, maybe you're ordering something online, or you want to give a description of something, and you tell them, I need a Safaricom green, they will easily understand what you are referring to, or what you are talking about. So that is very, very important, that you get to identify what you want people to know you for. So let me come back to the late Prime Minister Raila Odinga. This is a man that could not be ignored by all the previous and the current president of Kenya. So this is a guy who was known for handshake. People say some of his handshakes were coming as a way of betrayal. Some say some of these handshakes were good for the country to move forward and to heal and to make peace. But let me briefly delve into this aspect of the handshake and his identity and even branding. So this guy competed against Moi, the late the late second president of Kenya. That is Daniel Arap Toroitich Moi. And after some time, Moi came and realized that he could not do without making peace with this guy. And people talked, people had different opinions, but the fact remains that the president, in his own knowledge, realized that he could not do with that guy. Then come to the late third president of Kenya, Mwai Kibaki. If you can remember, or maybe if you are alive, you saw what happened, or you've heard of what happened in Kenya in the year 2008, after the general elections that year. People died, so many were killed, some lost property, some lost their loved ones, some lost their identities and all that. Some lost their jobs. Then after that, Mwai Kibaki realized, or the international community realized, that the country could not do without Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga making peace. So I want us to look at that scenario. This is someone who, according to the Electoral Commission then, was not the winner of the election. But then everybody is realizing that he has to, the president of the day has to make peace with him. So they had to make peace, and they entered into the Grand Coalition government. And they shared 50-50 of the government. I mean, some people would not make sense of it. How comes I've defeated you in an election and then you come to demand that we share the government of the day 50-50? You see? Then come 2013, he competed against Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, the 4th president of Kenya. The same happened in 2017. Then after 2017, I remember when he contested the results or the outcome of that election. There is a time the then NASA coalition members, which he led, threatened that all the counties or all the regions where NASA, the then coalition that they used for that election, had more influence, that people from these regions were not going to pay taxes. So they threatened that. And there was even a time they threatened and they asked people to boycott Safaricom. And I can tell you, from a business perspective, anyone could feel that heat. And Safaricom was not an exception in this case. So 1 year later, not 1 year, actually, I think not 1 year, because we were in election in August of 2017. And then in March 2018, the then President Uhuru Kenyatta realizes that I can't do without this guy, without getting the endorsement or the blessings of this guy. So then they enter into a handshake in March 2018. People talked, they gave their different opinions, and that actually impacted him. Impacted his election in 2022. When some people said, oh, this guy betrayed us by going into a handshake with the government of the day. He failed to defend us when he needed to defend us and all that. Then we came to the election of 2022. Okay? He competed against the current president, William Samoei Ruto. And it was such a fierce competition. And nobody would ever have thought that these two gentlemen would ever have shook hands after elections. And then what happens in the year 2024, a handshake between Raila Odinga and the current president, William Samoei Ruto. Now, if you have been watching the president talk about Raila, especially between that handshake and the death of Raila Odinga, there is this one remarkable statement that the president usually uses. That just like I stood with Raila Odinga in 2007 when he needed a man to stand with him, the same way Raila Odinga stood with me after my election when I needed a man to stand by my side. So we all know our president as someone who is smart. You know, this guy has been labeled as one of the best political strategists in Kenya. So for him to come and say that he needed a man to stand by his side after winning election, what does this tell you about the personality of Raila? You know, the president has all the powers. He has the military on his side. He has the central bank on his side. He has the members of parliament on his side. You know, he has the money and the influence and the position or the power to do anything he likes. But then he comes and tells us that he needed a man to stand by his side. And to him, this man was not his deputy president. This man was not even the Speaker of the Senate or the Speaker of the National Assembly who are allied to him. This man is not even, or was not even, the one or the people who funded his campaigns. But this is the man that vied and competed against him. And if you're familiar with the Kenyan politics, you know the kind of the unkind words that the political opponents in Kenya sometimes use against each other. Something I highly regret. Okay? So come to think of it. So what is this that Raila had built around him that could could not have him be ignored by the government of the day? Number one, Raila got his identity. The what? What do I want people to know me for? So Raila realized that he was going to fight for political justice for Kenyans. And he started this back in the years. He is among the many Kenyans who were exiled by the then government of KANU. He fled the country. He had his own challenges at some point. He got jailed for some of these reasons and all that. What the then government of the day did not know is that they were preparing him to become the next big thing. So what does that tell you? Sometimes in the journey of realizing your identity, you could be facing challenges. And some of these challenges could be self-doubt, maybe people doubting you, maybe financial barriers. Sometimes you don't have people to believe in you and all that. And that was Raila Odinga during the KANU era. Then as he kept on going through all these, it got to a point that now he actively started contesting in political elections. And every time after elections, sometimes he would go to the streets, or he would call people to the streets and say, my votes have been stolen. Guys, come and help me contest political injustice. Electoral injustice. Come and help me contest political injustice or electoral injustice. During these demonstrations, he would be tear gassed together with these people. People would lose lives, But this guy kept on soldiering on. This is one of the few Kenyans who would wake up amidst the threats from the police and the governments of the day, and would still wake up and go to the road to demonstrate. He would be tear gassed. There were instances when bullets were thrown at his cars, and all that. But he still did it anyway. So how did people come to believe in this man? He branded or he positioned himself as a fearless leader who is going to show up no matter what. And that way he won the hearts of many Kenyans to believe in the fact that he was their defender. Alright? And even you and myself at a personal level, sometimes maybe the road is rough. There are challenges, maybe you're going through in your journey to identity. But if you keep going, after some time people will be like, man, we saw this guy rise from nothing to something. We've had people being told, or people saying, I've risen, or I've come from grass to grace. Those are the instances. Okay? So during all this time, Raila Odinga built something we called political capital. He amassed so many followers. So by amassing these many followers, the government could not do, or the governments of the day could not do, were not able to do without half of the country, or more than half of the country, being against the government of the day. And for them to be able to make peace with these people, they had to use their leader that they believed in, and that was Raila Amollo Odinga. So what am I talking about? Sometimes you're going through that phase of identifying yourself or even building your brand. You know, sometimes you might not have the financial resources, but one of the best things you can do, or one of the best favors you can do yourself, is to build what we refer to as human capital. How do you build human capital? Human capital, or what is human capital? Human capital is the network of people around you, the people who believe in your cause. Okay? The people who believe in your vision, the people who believe in the things you want to achieve. And once these people strongly believe in what you want to do or what you're trying to do, believe me, if it's a product that you've been building over the years, the same people who believe in the product you've been building are the same people who are going to buy that product. And that is how money is going to come. Okay? So you need to start by building that awareness. Once you build awareness, you ensure that you enlighten people on the vision, or you sell the vision to the people so that they can get to believe in it. All right? Now, come to think of it, Raila Odinga was not loved by everyone. That would be the biggest lie. There are people who hated him, and there are people who loved him. And I remember there was a day that the DAPK party leader, that is Wamalwa, he said that Raila is the man, or Raila is a man whom you can't fully hate and you can't fully love. Why? Because even the people who hate him have to use his name to get political mileage. Okay? That there are some regions in Kenya that if you don't appear to be talking against Raila, then you're not likely to gain the political mileage. There are regions that if you're seen to be against Raila, then you don't stand a chance to be elected, or you're likely not to even gain political mileage. Okay? So what Raila did with that particular point is that he branded himself as too big to ignore in the political scene. He became too big to ignore. Whether you like him or not, whether you're from the same coalition or party with him or not, I mean, he became too big for you to ignore. All right? Let me go back to Safaricom. The same case. Safaricom in the telecommunication industry in Kenya have branded themselves as too big to ignore. Okay? It's either you're using Safaricom for communications, phone call, SMS and all that. You're using Safaricom for M-Pesa, or you're using Safaricom internet. But either way, in one way or another, as long as you're Kenyan, you cannot ignore Safaricom. This is something that even as people who are rising can borrow from Raila Odinga and the rest, the likes of Safaricom and the rest, branding yourself and positioning yourself as too big to ignore. So my challenge is, can we learn to first ask ourselves the what? What do I want people to know me for? As I summarize, because talking about Raila Odinga could perhaps take me a whole week, but I just picked that particular aspect of branding so that at least I tell you personally what I learned from Raila Odinga. As I come to conclusion, there is something that I would also like to talk about, which is very, very critical, and it's something that we all face in one way or another. Betrayal. This is a man who, despite all the love that he received from Kenyans and even Africans and even worldwide, he still was exposed to betrayal at some point, where close allies would jump ship immediately after he lost an election and moved to the other side of the political divide. And I don't know who I told this, but I really regret the fact that I didn't get time to sit down with this man while he was alive to get to learn how to live with betrayal. And I made fun of it to a friend of mine. I told him some of us cannot even stand a heartbreak from a woman or a man. I mean, how did this man live in politics for over 40 years, going through betrayals even from the closest people? What does that tell you, or what does that teaches? What does that teach us? Sorry. That tells us that sometimes politics is not supposed to be as emotional as we think it should be. Neither is it supposed to be personal as we think it should be. The same applies to business. We all sometimes do business, and we have seen people where you took a loan, you invested a lot of money in millions, and then an arson happens. You lose your business, you lose your stock and all that. We've seen some people go into depression. Some people even commit suicide out of that. Some people, after being heartbroken by their partners, they even attempt to commit suicide, or they think of something weird. But to me, it is the strength and the emotional strength of Raila Odinga. That is one thing I would like us to live with. Can we live with his emotional strength? He might not have been a saint to us, but there is one thing or two that we can learn from this man and live with, and it will help us transform our lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is just my own opinion that I wanted to share with you, our viewers, that if, as we interact with one another, let us pick one thing or two that we can emulate from them, that can get us to the next level. And now, as a conclusion, I want to ask you, after watching this video, please ask yourself, what do you want people to know you for? Once you ask yourself that, if you're spiritual or religious, you can pray about it, but don't sit on it. Go and work on it. It is not going to be easy. I'm not guaranteeing you that it's going to be easy. It is going to have challenges. But if you're able to successfully maneuver these challenges, then you are likely to be seen as the victor of the day, and people are going to see you as an unstoppable. Why? Because you've been able to overcome challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me, and may the soul of Raila Odinga continue resting in peace. Thank you.